Welcome back, and a very special welcome to a guest that has not been on this program before, but I've talked with elsewhere, Cleo Pascal. She is a non resident fellow of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. She works with academia, industry, and the defense community on a lot of challenges that don't get the kind of attention that they deserve, including one that we're going to drill down with her on at the moment. And that is what the Chinese Communist Party is doing in the Western Pacific that is, well, reminiscent of an island hopping strategy that we used there in the Second World War, and that, if used against us and against the free world more generally, could be exceedingly problematic. Cleo, welcome to Securing America. It's so good to have you with us. Delighted to have a chance to talk with you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure and an honor. Thank you.
I want to level set first with you a little bit. I think our audience is very conversant about, generally speaking, the problem that we see with the Chinese communists. But give us a sense of how the steps that they are taking in the Western Pacific really fit into a larger strategy of taking down the free world, and most especially removing the United States as its leading impediment to accomplishing sort of global dominion.
So this is the core question, right? What does the CCP want? And of course, the first thing the CCP wants is the perpetuation and growth and strengthening of the CCP. But then, from how it affects us, is one of the ways that they want to do this is to create a world in which China's number one. And we've heard that term, but they actually have a very specific meaning for that. It wants to be number one in terms of what they call in their think tanks comprehensive national power. And that comprehensive component of it is very comprehensive. So that means being number one in terms of military strength and economic strength, IP, and it all goes, they don't have to be number one in each of those categories. It goes into an aggregate empirical calculation, which the think tanks do, where they say all of our things combined give us a numerical value of 367. Another country is 489. And they try to jockey. So that means two things. That means one, they try to get better. The other is it helps them to be number one in terms of comprehensive national power to knock other people down. And they can do that through various unrestricted warfare techniques, which we've seen across the board around the world, undermining our economies, our societies, our alliances, anything you can imagine, because that helps them become number one in terms of comprehensive national power, which is their ultimate goal in terms of geostrategy.
You know, that's a very elegant way to describe a long term systematic bid to achieve a new world order in which they are the dominant force, and everybody else is basically a vassal state. So, if that's the plan, and they are systematically pursuing it through what they've called unrestricted warfare, what's going on in the Western Pacific, specifically places like the South China Sea and now the Solomon Islands, that fit into that plan to both sort of evict the United States and exercise increasing control over those who actually live there?
So we've often heard this term "winning without fighting," right? Where this is the old Sun Tzu term, and you hear that that's one of the main goals of the way that they're engaging in the world is to win without fighting. But actually, if you look at the characters that go into that sentence in Chinese, the win actually it actually means getting the other side to submit. So when we think of winning, for example, the war in the Pacific, and we're coming up to the 80th anniversary of the Battle of Guadalcanal, when we think win, we think there's a battle, you beat the other side, and then that's it. Then they know you know you won, and then you go back to building each other up, and now we can trade with Japan, and they're one of our strongest allies. What they want is a perpetual state of submission of the other side. And so they achieve it through, as you said, unrestricted warfare, which I'm sure your viewers know very well, in order to achieve this comprehensive national power. And so the methods that they use depend on what's most effective or appropriate in the location. So in the case of the South China Sea, it was militarization to create the psychological effect of dominance so that they're much less likely to be challenged by the Philippines, for example. In the
And when you
case of
say
other countries like
militarization, you mean the creation of what I call bastions in various places in the South China Sea, these atolls that they've turned now into full up military forward operating bases, right?
correct, and they have multiple roles. One is, of course, as Captain James Fennell, who's been on regularly and who's the expert on this, eloquently describes. This is, these are bases. These are a bunch of Pearl Harbors from which they can forward deploy. So that would, but it also has a psychological effect. And this is one of the three warfares, right? Media warfare, psychology, and lawfare. You look at those bases and you get scared, and that's part of the winning without fighting. That's part of the attempt to dominate the region.
Intimidation.
um,
Yeah.
yeah,
And that's not just the Philippines, which you've mentioned that they're trying to influence in this way. It's, I guess, the Vietnamese, it's the Japanese, certainly the Taiwanese, maybe even the Australians. Is that right? And then how does the forward movement into another important set of islands, these natural islands, the Solomons, play into this larger strategy of winning without fighting? Cleo.
so if you think back to your World War II history and all the sites of all of those battles, Tulagi and Guadalcanal is mentioned, but even Tarawa or Macon. Tarawa and Macon are in the country of Kiribati. Guadalcanal is in Solomons. These are countries that flipped to China in 2019 through political warfare, right? They
Flipped
prefer to
meaning
do it.
that they abandoned their previous recognition of Taiwan in favor of mainland China.
Correct. And it should be specified that we're talking about the leadership. This isn't necessarily what the population wants or the opposition party wants. This is elite capture in order to achieve this political warfare goal. And that's the situation that we saw happen in 2019. So they're island hopping through political warfare to preempt having to do it kinetically.
Which, as we saw in World War II, can be a messy bit of business if it's, an opposition is in place to resist the forcible conquest of these places. But if they can do it through political means, or as you say, elite capture, it's game on. And that can turn into, of course, new forward operating bases, new power projection opportunities.